Find out what your customer is willing to pay before you sell them the product.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
I mean, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Jennings Executive Search. I had a great conversation with John Jennings about the skills needed in different pricing roles. He and I think a lot alike. If you're looking for a new pricing role, or if you're trying to hire just the right pricing person, I strongly suggest you reach out to Jennings Executive Search. They specialize in placing pricing people. Say that 3 times fast. Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the discovered relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving, and our guest today is Michael Hammersley, and here are 3 things you want to know about Michael before we start. He is the co-founder and CEO of Drop Pilot, which is why we're here, because I want to learn about what they do. He has a background of finance and accounting, and he has a law degree. No wonder he doesn't want to be a lawyer. And finally, he was an U.S. ambassador to Antarctica. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Hey, with such an eclectic background, how did you get into pricing?
So I kind of just stumbled into it as a career, but I've always been interested in pricing. Before I went to law school, I ran a distressed debt value fund. And one of the things that I would look at and when I was evaluating companies was their particular pricing competitive advantages to determine whether I was going to make an investment or not. And then later, after I graduated law school, I was asked to come aboard Drop Pilot, and that's how my career developed into becoming a pricing consultant, pricing analyst.
So first off, I work a little bit with private equity firms, and I have to say the idea of analyzing people's pricing potential as a distressed fund is pretty awesome. I mean, that's a great thought.
Yeah, I mean, because it's interesting to see, whether they're going to be able to turn around or not. And if they have a pricing competitive advantage, but they're just in a bit of a rough spot or have a liquidity issue, then, that's probably a good investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I say that's probably the same decision private equity firms could make as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. How much room is there to grow? Nice. Okay. So tell me about Drop Pilot. What is it that you do? You sent me a little bit of a description, but unfortunately the listeners can't hear it. So give me a quick overview and then we'll dive into some specific questions.
Sure. So we're a dual-sided marketplace. And the main point of the platform is to help businesses learn what a customer is willing to pay for any new product before they go to sell it through their primary sales channel. And so as a dual-sided marketplace, we've got benefits for both buyers and sellers. It might make sense to walk through the seller side first and then you discuss the buyer side.
Yeah. So when you say the words dual-sided marketplace, first off, tell me, what does that mean to you?
So it means that we don't actually have any products of our own. So we're reliant on sellers to sell their products through our marketplace, and we're reliant on buyers to use us to buy those products.
So that's like Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Amazon has some of their own products. It would be more like
They do, yes.
Yeah, so it'd be more like or Etsy.
Or Etsy. Right. Okay. So these are essentially marketplaces.
Exactly. Yep.
Is what we're saying. And so are you guys a marketplace or are you a research area? Because my implication or inference was that it was more research.
No, we're a marketplace. We do lots of research, but no, the platform is a marketplace.
Okay. So let's hear it from the seller side. Go ahead.
Okay, so the benefit to sellers is that they can learn what a customer is willing to pay for the product before they actually go to sale. And how that works is they'll do a limited release with us. All right, so it's not 500 units, it's not 1,000 units. It's typically 6 to 10, and they'll set a minimum bid to cover their manufacturing costs. All right, and then what happens is our customers or third-party customers will come in and submit blind bids for that item for sale. We put a hold on the buyer's card for the full amount of the bid for the duration of the transaction. And it's important to note that when sellers sell with us, it has to be a multi-unit product release. All right, and all of the products have to be the same. Um, and so going back to, the customers, the blind bidding for the customers, we'll put a hold on their card for the full amount. And then once the product release is over, the businesses get to look at all of those blind bids that were submitted, and they can calculate and quantify, how much a customer is willing to pay for this item. And then they go to full production and sell it through their own, primary sales channel.
Okay. So give me an example of a product. What's somebody who would do this and who's done this with you?
So we've had a number of different brands work with us. We've had artists, we've had clothing companies, we've had service providers like apps for health and life coaching, workout coaching. We've had hot sauce, and we've also got a company that works with us consistently, and they sell puzzles. And so it's a new puzzle every time, and there's a cash reward attached to that. So there's no real limitation on who can drop with us or who can release their products with us, as long as it's a multi-unit transaction and the products are all uniform.
Okay. And so the transaction has to be multi-unit. If I'm selling a
hmm
puzzle, do I have to sell multiple puzzles, or can I just, I mean, I assume I have to have 6 to 12 of them so that I can deliver 6 to 12 of them to 6 to 12 different customers, but I only need one puzzle per customer, right?
Okay, so you would need to have six of the same or 12 of the same puzzles. All right, but not everybody's going to actually buy your puzzle. And so it might make sense to transition here to the buyer side so I can explain why. Um,
Okay.
all
Let's
right,
hear
so when buyers get on our website, the benefit to them is that they will either pay less than they bid for the item or they'll get a full refund. And so how that works is what we call the drop price. All right, so that's the price that all of the winning bidders will pay. So say, let's go back to the puzzle example. Say we've got, six puzzles. All right, and say 100 people bid for that puzzle. So whatever the top six bids are, those people are going to get the puzzle, but they're not going to pay what they bid. What they'll pay is whatever the seventh person bid. And so what we do is use the inventory available or the inventory for sale, and then count down from the top bid. So starting with the highest, and second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and then we go to the next lowest bid, which is the seventh bidder in this case, and that's what all six of the top bidders will pay for the product, and everybody else gets a full refund.
So from an auction perspective, that makes sense, right? That's a really good idea for buyers. But I'm still struggling with, is this a research tool or a marketplace? And so if I'm a puzzle manufacturer and I create 6 puzzles and I give them to you and you sell them, and I say, oh, look, their price really should be
hmm
$23. Then I go to Amazon and I sell it for $23.
Yeah,
Is that
Yeah, you could definitely do that. Okay, so from that perspective, it's really both. Because we're a marketplace since we are, selling other people's products and other people, buy them from us. But the research tool aspect of it comes from the payment system that we operate on. And so that's a proprietary payment system that we developed. And from that perspective, yeah, we definitely are a research tool.
okay? And what is the payment system? By the payment system, you just mean we select who it is that's going to win, or is there a separate payment system like PayPal or something like that?
So we partnered with Stripe, and so we have a proprietary algorithm that attaches to Stripe's payment network, and that's how we run, the drop price calculation and things like that, and figure out who's going to actually win the auction. And so then once that transaction clears, then Stripe handles the rest, and takes the payment methods of the buyers and things like that.
Oh, so you don't have to manually go back and say these people all bought it at this
No.
price. You just essentially told Stripe this was the winning price, and Stripe has put that algorithm in their system.
Right, yeah. So they clear all the transactions for us. There's nothing manual about it.
Nice. And so, how much coaching do you give sellers when they're trying to figure out how to handle this?
A lot. I mean, because it's a pretty, different way to look at pricing, and it's a different way to do, discover on what a customer is willing to pay. And so a lot of the coaching comes in the form of, what should I set my minimum bid at? Because that's really all the seller, has control over. It's up to the buyers to actually decide, what the drop price is going to be and, whether they're going to bid on that product or not. And so we do a lot of minimum bid coaching, because they're actually, there's a science to it, as to whether you should set a low minimum bid, high minimum bid, and things like that. And so the brands we work with, really have to get used to that. And we spend a lot of time helping them.
And do you tell the buyers what the minimum bid is?
Yeah, yeah. So when a buyer comes in and they want to, place a bid for the item, they'll see, when they go to pay what the minimum bid is. And then they have to, of course, put in a bid that's higher than that.
Yep. Okay. So some challenges I see is that if I'm a manufacturer, I'm a business, I want to sell something on your site because trying to figure out how much it's
Mhm.
worth, right? How much people would pay for it. You have to have a set of buyers that are appropriate for my product. So, for example, I sell pricing consulting hours. And so I want to put an hour of consulting. I'm going to give you 5 different hours of consulting or 6 different hours of consulting. You can put it on your site. I'll give you a zero. Well, no, I'm going to make it $1,000 minimum bid, and you will get nobody to bid on it. I mean, maybe you
Yeah.
would, but my guess is it's nobody because you're mostly running a B2C site, and most people who would ever want me is running a business.
So we're actually B2B to C. And so how you would get people to bid on that is if you announce to, people that had previously gone and bought your pricing consulting services from you, you could say, hey, I'm, doing this product release. And, if you are interested in buying an hour of my services, go to the droppilot.com and you'll be able to, get those services for less than you actually bid. And so we use the seller's, existing customer base, to help them determine what their customers are willing to pay for the product.
Hmm. Yeah, and so what you're saying is that I could bring in my own
Hmm.
buyers.
In fact, you would want to do that because it's going to give you better data. It's going to give you better pricing data. Because if you've already made a sale to these people, you know that they're interested in your product, which means that when you're releasing a new product, you want to see what they'll pay for it.
Yeah, in a way, that's kind of interesting. So let's say that I had 20 hours a month I wanted to work, or I wanted to sell hours for, and I put all 20 hours on your system, and I told all my customers go buy over there, and so then they're going to bid for the hours,
Yeah,
and they end up paying the 21st price essentially,
exactly.
the 21st hour
And you
price.
would set,
Yeah.
oh,
So
sorry.
no, that's
And
okay.
you would set your minimum bid so whatever your manufacturing cost or whatever your cost is going to be, you're positive that you're going to clear that. And so there's a benefit to both sides there because you're right, the buyers will pay less than they bid.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about how many buyers you have. So I'm the hot sauce manufacturer, or I'm the puzzle manufacturer. Do I have to bring my own buyers to the market in order to make this work, or do you have 100,000, a million buyers who tend to shop there and say, "Oh, I think I'm going to buy hot sauce today."
We're not quite at 100,000 or a million yet. So typically, we do a once a month event called Drop Day. All right, and what that is we'll have 10 different brands dropping their new products all in the same day. And so we typically have about 3,000 to 5,000 unique visitors that come in, to make purchases, for these particular products. And so what we do is we ask, the brands we partner with to advertise on their own social media and things like that to generate hype. And so then they get those, users to come in on drop day. And the benefit to them is that there's cross-selling that goes on. So somebody that comes in to buy a bottle of hot sauce ends up with hot sauce in a painting. And so they get to benefit from getting new customers as well.
Hmm, that's pretty interesting. And have you had any sellers tell you how this compares to doing their own pricing research?
Yeah. So most companies, I mean, even small businesses just use cost plus margin, where they're just they'll research, what's the appropriate margin for a t-shirt or what's the appropriate margin for, a bottle of hot sauce. And they'll just put that margin on their own product and then sell it at that. But then when they, drop with us or release their products with us, they're surprised because consumers are willing to pay more for their products than they would have ever expected. And so then once, they go through the process with us, we have a lot of repeat droppers who each time they come up with a new product, they'll come back, release it with us, figure out how to price it, and then sell it on their own website.
Hmm. So that's actually interesting. So let me go through a scenario with you where I think this won't work, and you can fix my
Sure.
thinking. So I'm going to sell a T-shirt. It's got a really cool saying on the front, whatever it happens to be. You have 1 million shoppers, and I give you 10 T-shirts, and you happen to find 100 shoppers who love that
Hmm.
T-shirt. And so they ended up bidding the price up, and it comes out to be a really high price, right? So I'm selling my T-shirt at $50 a piece. This is pretty cool. So then I go to the real world, and I go on Amazon or some site like that. I post my T-shirt for $50 a piece, and I find it doesn't sell as well. And that's because the $50 came from 100 out of 1 million potential shoppers. So in essence, the price came out higher than what I would have done if I were looking for a bigger market share.
Yeah, and so in that case, you've got to remember that the data we generate is really just, a reference point because right now, if you want to figure out customer willingness to pay for a pricing, tool, you really have to generate those numbers on your own based on estimations. But in this case, we have actual customers who are separating, with their money to buy your product. And so it's a better quality of pricing data that doesn't, really exist anywhere else. And so you wouldn't want to use the highest bids or even sometimes the drop price to price your product. What you would want to do is take a look at the analytics and find, the clusters of where the most bids came in, like what the most common bid was, and then use that as a reference point to set your retail price. Because you're right.
Okay, so I'm going to restate what I said because now I think that this is a really good idea. So you've got your 1 million customers. It turns out that 100,000 of them bid on the
Hmm.
product. So that's good news, right? 100,000 thought it was worth more than my cost or whatever my minimum bid was. And the top 50 paid me a lot. So I made a little bit of money on selling those 10 units. But in truth, I now have data of how much 1,000 people are willing to pay for this.
Right, exactly. And just
And
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
Just a
No,
small minor correction. So you said the top 50, it would actually be the top 10. Okay, so
top
yeah,
10.
we always base on inventory.
Yep. Top 10. Sorry. I'm not writing all my numbers
That's
down, so
okay.
I'm messing this up as we go. But no, because now what I'm seeing is I'm actually seeing the bids of everybody, and now I can tell where should I be pricing if I want to sell 1,000 out of 1 million. I don't remember if I think I said 100,000, but it doesn't matter. But if I want to sell 100,000 units, I'll price it at my cost, and if I want to sell, X number of units, we can go figure that out. So this is actually a really interesting way to create a demand curve.
Right. And you've got to remember too that we put a hold on the buyer's card for that full amount. So it's not like, they can just come in and push these inflated artificial bids. They've actually have to separate with that money for, X number of days until the transaction clears and they get either a partial refund, which is, the difference between what they bid and the drop price. That's what all the winners get. And then everybody else gets a full refund. So the data quality is very high.
Nice, nice. So I like the idea. So the only thing that we're back to in terms of what I would push back on is the market that you're using representative of the real market? But
Yes and no. So no, because we operate, our product releases on a time scale. So it's typically 3 days. All right, and so you've got a scarcity factor that does, skew the results a little bit. But again, if you want to look at the pricing analytics and you want to find out what your customers are willing to pay, it actually makes more sense to operate in a pressurized environment because you get the highest and best price, the highest that the customer is willing to pay. And again, you don't necessarily want to charge that, but it's still interesting to see exactly how much they want to pay. But they are skewed because it is pressurized in the sense of a set amount of time, finite time to make the purchase.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. What a clever way to create a demand curve, to simulate a demand curve. Love that. Love that. Excellent. Michael, did I not ask you something that we really need to know about this?
Um, no, well, but I do want to tell you about how the idea actually started because,
Oh,
okay.
please.
So one of our co-founders went to buy tickets to a Muse concert. All right. So we all know about the scalping issues faced by Ticketmaster, Nike, and things like that. And so one thing that our algorithm or our platform actually does is it completely prevents the use of scalping bots. And how we're able to do that is because we don't actually know what the price is going to be for the product. And so there's no way to, disclose that MSRP or price for whatever is selling. And so because of that, we take away the advantage that scalping bots have. They actually can't function on our website. We've hired, scalping bots to come in, or operators of scalping bots to come in and try to, bot our website, and it never works because their algorithms can't function. And so that's just another interesting aspect that we've, started as a anti-bot, anti-scalping tool, and then sort of worked our way into becoming, basically a pricing research or pricing analytics platform.
Nice, nice. And that's pretty common that we go to solve one problem and then we find other problems that we solved while we're doing it.
Exactly.
So that's good. All right. Well, Michael, as we wrap this up, I have to ask the final
Sure.
question. What is one piece of pricing advice you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
Find out what your customer is willing to pay before you sell them the product.
That's always great advice. Right? Try to figure out what the willingness to pay actually is. Michael, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
LinkedIn or email. My direct email is michael@thedroppilot.com. And LinkedIn also works just fine.
Okay, and I'm sure we'll have the URL in the show notes. And to our listeners, thank you so much for your time today. If you enjoyed this, would you please leave us a rating and a review? And speaking of reviews, Bama Megan left a review on, of all places, Audible podcasts. I was on Audible the other day and I saw they had podcasts there. And so I looked up my podcast and there was a review. So thank you, Bama Megan. She wrote, thought-provoking, thoughtful discussions about showing value to customers and pricing optimally for the business. Good guests with broad perspectives. Bama, the check is in the mail. I appreciate it. And finally, if you have any questions or comments about the podcast or pricing in general, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact. Thanks again to Jennings Executive Search for sponsoring our podcast. If you're looking to hire someone in pricing, I suggest you contact someone who knows pricing people. Contact Jennings Executive Search.